In this video, I'm going to show you how to actually automate the customer support in your agency. We're going to be going over 3 live automation builds that you can actually use to automatically automate your emergency customer support inquiries from your clients. This is a great addition to have within your agency, and it's something that we use every single day at Fluxomate within our agency, but also our partners' agencies. If you don't know who I am, my name is Leo. I'm the CEO and founder of Fluxomate, an operation agency that specializes in helping agency owners just like you set up scale-proof systems. Using this system, you'll be able to automatically create new tasks whenever an emergency request comes in from your client, send your client an update whenever a task is completed, and do different things such as request updates on the specific task if there's any delays. This is obviously not the only solution you need to improve your customer success. However, using tools like this and get an understanding of how to actually seamlessly integrate automation within your task management system will be a great asset in actually improving that experience you're providing with your clients and setting up the foundations for a really skill-proof system for your agency. I don't want to waste any more of your time, so let's get straight into what we're going to be building out today. Alright, so like I said in the introduction, today I'm going to be showing you how to actually automate your customer support. When I say customer support, I'm going to keep this as an emergency. I'm going to explain exactly how you can actually use this in your agency. But we're going to be going over 3 simple automations. One, to actually record this task in your task management system whenever the client fills in that form. Another one, to automatically inform your team and your client when the task is actually complete. And a third bonus automation showing you how you can actually request an update using buttons within your task management software to keep on top of your team and make sure there's no delays in any tasks that you're actually doing. Now, I want to be completely honest with you guys, and I have to speak the truth. Do I think that this Google form is the best solution for customer support when it comes to agencies? No. I think this is great when it comes to e-commerce, SaaS companies, or even maybe different communities if you're dealing with specific tickets on errors. I think this would be great. But I don't think this is a sole solution that you can use for your customer support. And I'll explain why. I think you should use this in addition to all the stuff you already have going, such as your weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly calls, and that constant communication you already have with your clients. The way I think you can actually use this is having this as a secret weapon on the side, specifically for emergency situations. Let's say you have an ad account goes down, app stops performing, or just any sort of emergency that you may have within your agency. Instead of your client have to wait, let's say 10 hours for a response, which in emergency situations is quite long, and then being angry, which may end up in them eventually leaving, you have this sort of customer support system that can give an immediate response so they're actually happy. You can calm down their nerves and you can get worked on these emergency situations as soon as possible. Just to reiterate, guys, I don't think that's the only solution that you should use within your agency, depending on your model, obviously, but in terms of your customer success and customer communication. But it's a great addition to actually add on top of what you're currently using. And like I said in the introduction, guys, I use this within my agency specifically when it comes to automation errors. So you can see the similarities, and I'm actually recommending you should use this within your agency. But of course, it depends on your model. For now, let's just go into building automations, and you can get a good idea of whether it's something that you should use in your agency or not. So we're going to be building 3 different automations, and we can get started with the first one right now. The first automation is going to be very, very simple. It's going to be triggered whenever your client actually completes that emergency form. Whenever that form is completed, it's going to create a task in your project management system, send a message to your team, and then send an email to the client, letting them know that we actually started to work on this task. It's a very, very simple automation, but very, very key to actually have. And then before I actually go into creating this automation, let me go over the tools that we actually need to make this whole system successful. The first thing we're going to need is an automation tool. Now, this is fairly obvious. This is where we're going to be building everything out. There's 2 main no-code automation tools, Zapier and Make. As you guys, there's a bit discussion within the industry on whether Zapier is better or Make is better. In my opinion, they're all fairly similar. At the other end of the day, they're all doing the same thing, just repackaging different APIs. In my opinion, I think you should just sign up to both of them. They all have free trials, test them out and see which one you prefer. We use both of them on agencies depending on our different partners. Only thing I'll say is I think Zapier is probably a bit more beginner friendly and Make is a bit harder to learn at first, but at the same time, Zapier is a bit more expensive and Make is a bit more on the affordable side. Once again, I don't have any affiliate links, I'm not sponsored by anyone, so I'd recommend actually signing up to both of them with a free trial and see which one you prefer and then making your decision from there. Once you've got automation tool, the next thing we need is a communication tool. Now, we're going to be using Slack here for our team communication and email for our client communication. In reality, if you want to set this up properly, and I'll show you in a second, I'd recommend using Slack for both of these. But I want to keep this automation as beginner friendly as I can. I'm just going to be using email for the client communication side of things. But don't worry, guys, if you are using Slack for your client communication, in this video, also see how you can integrate that within the automations building out. The next thing we need, which is very, very important to this actually, is a task management tool. Now, for this, I'm going to be using a tool that we actually built out in a video about a week ago. It's the longest video ever recorded, and it's just an internal project management tool that we made from scratch. Now, if you haven't watched that video and it's your first time actually seeing me, don't worry. You don't have to use this tool. You can use any task management tool. And what I'm showing you in this video specifically applies to 90% of all task management tools out there, like, I don't know, Notion, ClickUp, Asana, whatever you guys want. But if you have watched that video and you built out what I showed you how to build out, then I recommend using the internal platform that we built together. But once again, guys, you can use whatever task management tool you want. It doesn't matter. And the last thing we need is a form tool. Now, this is probably the one that matters the least. You can use any form tool as long as they have an API, which basically means they can integrate with different software. For this, we're going to use Google Forms, but you can use Typeform, Tally, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. In terms of the actual form we're going to be using is very, very simple. We're just collecting the name, the email, what they actually need support with, and just getting a sense of how urgent it is on a scale of 1 to 5. Once again, doesn't matter if you're using Google Forms, Tally, whatever. It's just an example form we're going to be using for the actual tickets. Cool, guys. So now you have an idea of all the software we're going to be using. Let's actually get started in building a first automation, which is going to be that automation that gets triggered when a client actually completes that form I showed you a second ago. Right, guys, so I just went ahead and logged into my Make account that I use for YouTube. And just to show you that you can actually use this with a free trial. Everything I'm doing here is on a free account. It's just the account we use for our YouTube videos. So I'm going to head over to scenarios and I'm going to create a new scenario. I'm just going to call this our customer support automation. Automation #1. Perfect. Like I said, the trigger for this is going to be someone actually completing that form. So for this, I'm going to press this big plus button right here. I'm going to search for Google Forms. If you haven't reused Google Forms in a previous automation, it's very simple. It's basically just logging into Google to actually connect your account. And for the actual trigger, we're going to scroll down to see watch responses. And then we want to get that form ID. Now you could search for it, but you could also just get it straight from a URL. It's just this line of text or random letters right here. So you can just copy and paste that here. And as a limit, it just basically means what's the maximum number of actual forms, responses that you're going to be collecting at any given time. It depends, obviously, how many clients you might have, but I wouldn't suggest putting in more than 5, so that if there is an error or any sort of loop, it won't actually end up maxing out your automations for no reason. Perfect. So now it should go ahead and automatically collect responses. The last thing we actually need to set up is the frequency of when it's actually going to check for those responses. Make it slightly different to Zapier. Zapier is set up in a way that whenever a form response comes in, I will start the automation. Make on a hand, you can have to set up when it's going to check for those new responses. So there's a bunch of different options they have. You can have regular intervals, once every day, days of the week, days of the month, even, or specific dates. I'd recommend doing it at regular intervals. Now, because it's an emergency kind of situation, I would recommend doing more than an hour, but anywhere between 15 to 1 hour will be all right. Remember, if you're looking after your tokens, the lower you put this, the more tokens is going to use up, because every single time it runs, it's going to use one of your tokens for your automation usages. So for this, I'm just going to leave it at 15 and we'll leave it as that. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and create a form response, and then I want to test the trigger to see if it actually is able to collect that form response. All right, guys, so I went ahead and actually complete that ticket. If you go back to Make now, and we actually test this all time, and just run this module specifically, we should see that form response we just completed come in. So open this up, we can see a second response is there. And if I go over to name, we can see the text answers are all there, which is all the stuff I filled out. Cool. So now that we've actually completed a form, the second step we actually need to do is create a task in our task management system. So like I explained when I was actually going through the tools we actually need for this video, I'm going to be using this task management product we actually built together in a video last week. It's fairly simple, guys. It's basically just a project management system, but for this specific scenario, because I want to allow you to actually apply this to whatever task management system you may have, we're just going to be focusing on the task management side of things. And all we want to do, if you have a task here, we want to create a task right here in the backlog stage with a task type, a due date, the name, and the quick description based on the form responses. So for this, we're going to go ahead and actually connect my task management system, which in this example is called NoLoco. Once again, if you're using ClickUp, Asana, whatever you're using, you can still create a very, very similar thing. And for this, I'm going to go ahead and create a new record because we want to create a task. Once that's in, you're going to go ahead and choose your task collection, which is basically your database. So for the name, we're going to enter that name that I actually entered. So if we go over to name and open up the test answers, we can see that value right there, which is just a name. And then we're going to name it urgent task, I guess. We'll leave it as that. We're going to leave the start date, but the due date we are going to enter. Now, obviously, this depends on your specific circumstances, but I'm going to set the due date to 6 months in the future. For that, I'm going to go over to this calendar thing right here. And you can see we have a bunch of different functions we can actually play around with in terms of adding hours, days, months. I'm just going to add a couple hours. I'm going to press this function and it's very simple, guys. All you want to do is put the current time here and then the amount of hours you want to add in the second section. So here, for example, I'm going to put the current time, which I get from now, right there. And here I'm going to add 6, just because I want to make this due in 6 hours because it's an emergency. So I want to make sure it's done as soon as possible. So we've got a task name, we have the due date. The next thing we're going to add is the task notes. Now, once again, we're going to get that straight from the trigger. So for this, I'm going to label this client, urgent client request. I'm going to put description and then I'm going to enter a short description that they entered when they actually filled out the form. So for that, I'm going to go down here to what you need support with, open up a text answers, answers again, and then enter that value right there. I'm also going to say how urgent they graded it, urgency factor. And then once again, I'm just going to enter that straight from Google Form by opening this up, going over to text answers, answers again, and adding that value. I also had here is 1 to 5 urgency. Perfect, guys. We don't have any relevant links at the moment. For status, we're going to put it in a backlog stage because no one started yet. And for task type, we have a couple options here. We could add different automations where basically it sets different paths depending on different types by analyzing the text or whatever. But for this, I'm just going to leave it as other to keep it very, very simple. Now, you can see here, we also have the option to assign a project. If I was doing this properly, guys, utilizing all the features that we actually built out in that previous video, I would assign a project just so we can have that linkage between the project and the tasks. However, because I want to allow you to actually use this with any task management tool, regardless of whether you have a project management system as well, I'm just going to leave that empty. I'm just going to run the whole thing now. So if you go ahead and run this whole module, it should now automatically create a task. Perfect. So now if you go back to our project management system and we can see we have that task that just came in now with that quick description, the urgent tasks, urgency factor, and everything like that. One thing I did forget to add here is the client email. That'll be quite important, especially because we're not linking a specific client or project at the moment. So I'm just going to go back here and within the no local, when we actually create a task, I'm going to scroll down and add the client email and add the name, sorry, and the email. Over here, text answers, value, and then for email, you can add email there and add the email from the questions we asked them from the Google form. Perfect. So that's much better, guys. Now we can actually identify them, which will make life a lot easier. So now we actually create a task and set up the trigger. The next thing we need to do is send a message to our team to let them know that I actually need to complete this task. I'm going to do this on Slack. So I'm just going to add another module. I'm going to search for Slack. And for this, I'm going to scroll down until I see create a message. Now, you could also DM a person depending on how you want to set this up, but I'm just going to send a channel message to make life a bit easier for everyone. For this, I'm going to use my testing channel, which you can find just selecting from the list, just like that, guys. Now, you could do this on text and you could do this on blocks. It doesn't really matter. I always prefer to use blocks just because it's a bit simpler. If you don't know what blocks are, I suggest going over to the block kit builder, which is going to load in a second, and you'll see it's very, very easy to actually set these up with different buttons so you can actually access the task. In my opinion, it just makes everything look a bit cleaner, and I'll show you what that actually looks like here. So here's the block builder. As you can see, you basically add in whatever you want to add in here, and it'll create a code which you can just copy and paste. So if I go ahead and actually build this out live for you guys, you can see I'm just going to delete all of these things. I'm going to leave the buttons because we can have button to link us straight to the task. But I am going to add just some plain text at the top. I'm going to scroll up. And honestly, I don't think we need any more than that. Delete that and we'll leave it as that. Perfect. Now, obviously, when I go into make, we're going to send this up a bit more. So if you go down, exit this, head over back to make to the block section. And now we're going to copy and paste that code that we just got. Just like that. There's a couple of things I want to change. So obviously the plain text, I'm going to put, instead of that, I'm going to put new task coming in from then the customer name and the email, which I'll get straight from the Google form responses again. And the next thing I want to do is just add that button label. So we saw that it was a quick description and a button on the right hand side. So I'm just going to say, press this button to see more information. Actually, I'm just going to put see more information and just a little arrow there. And now for the button, I want to leave it as click me. But for the URL, we're going to enter that URL from the specific task. And to get this is very simple. If you open up a task right here, we can see this URL. And the only thing that changes is that last digit, which is just the unique ID. This exact same thing for most task management tools or most software in general. So we're going to enter that in and we're going to delete that last record ID. And instead of having the same record ID for every single automation, we're going to make it so that it takes us to that task we just created, just like that. So if we go ahead and press OK, and actually go ahead and I'll run the whole automation again. Why not? Let me go back here. So I've gone ahead and run automation. So now if I open up Slack, see most of this is blurred out for you, but if I go to testing, you can see we have that new urgent task from Bob James. And if I go to see information, I actually click that, it will take me over here. Let me just move this so you guys can actually see this. It takes me straight to that task we just created, which is the urgent client request from Bob James, blah, blah, all the information. Now we can change it, so we format it a bit more. So if you go back over here to make and press Slack again, we can open the advanced settings. This is basically where you can actually configure your application. There's a bunch of different things you can do, from changing the icon, the username, everything like that. You just can leave it for now. But if you didn't want to change it, it's just simple as just type in a specific name you want to use here. For the icon emoji, just use the Slack emojis, which you can do just by doing robot_face, just for example. But like I said, I'm just going to leave this for now because it doesn't really matter. The last thing we want to do now, we send a message to our team. We also want to send a message to the client. Now, like I said earlier, if you're doing this properly and you're using your Slack to actually communicate with your clients, you don't want them sending an email. It's always best to only have one clear path of communication to avoid confusing your client, also confusing your team. So if you're doing this for your client, you'd also want to send a Slack message to that specific client channel you have. Now, in order to actually do that, you need a Slack channel ID for that specific client. There's a bunch of different ways to do this. Either getting it straight from a project management tool, CRM, or even creating a specific database or Google Sheet, for example, that has one column for the client emails and another column for the Slack channel IDs. So whenever this automation runs, you just add a step right here. Actually look on that spreadsheet for that specific email, match it that specific row, and then paste that client Slack channel ID and the next message when actually sending a message. It's not very complicated, but for this example, because this is a beginner friendly tutorial, I'm just going to send a simple Gmail. But honestly, guys, I really encourage you to create what I just explained a second ago if you are using Slack. So if we go back to the automation, we'll add another step now, and this time it's going to be Gmail or whatever email provider you want to use. I'd use Gmail because it's the simplest. And we're going to scroll all the way down to send the email. This is very simple. For the two, we want to add that email that we just got in from Google Form. So if you scroll all the way bottom and move myself out the way, scroll all the way to the bottom to what is your email, text answers, put on the text answers again and add in that value. For the subject, I'm going to put new urgent request. Actually, for the subject, because we're sending this to the client, I'm going to put we are working on it. And I don't know, you can do whatever you want to put for the content. This isn't really a copyright masterclass. I'm just going to put maybe a sentence to say we have processed your task and are currently working on it. Update will be your way soon. If my customer success manager saw this, she'd probably screw at me. But this isn't a copyright masterclass. I'm just here to show you the automations. If you're doing this properly, I would recommend adding some information from the form as well. You could even generate an initial AI response for the form based on your, I don't know, your standard operating procedures and your service delivery. If you want more information on how to do all the different type of stuff and actually tie in AI to your automations, you can check out this video in the top right hand corner. Shows you how to supercharge your automations using AI. Is a great tool to have, but not something we'll be covering in this video. Cool, so we have a very, very simple message there. We're gonna go ahead and test it as always. So if you go over to OK, and we're actually gonna run this module to actually send the email. So if I actually send that to myself as an example, now open up my email, you can see we have that email from Leo Fluxomate that we have processed tasks and are currently working on it. An update will be your way soon. Once again, guys, don't copy this copy. Obviously, you should not use it. But I'm just showing you the automation side of things, and we've gone ahead and actually successfully sent that email. Cool. So that's the first automation done. We've gone ahead and actually automatically processed that customer support ticket submission, create a task. within our task management system, send a message to the team to actually let them know that I actually need to get started with the task. And lastly, send an email to the client to let them know that we've seen the task and we're currently working on it to find a solution. The next automation we want to do is whenever the task is actually complete, we want to send a Slack message to the team to let them know everything's good, and we want to send an email to the client to let them know the task has been completed. Now, initially, when I was building this, I was thinking of building some sort of button within this project management system. So it'll come up here and you press it, add it to complete, and then you move on from there. However, because I want to make this as accessible as I can for everyone, we're not going to do that. Instead, we're going to make it in a way that most task management systems can actually do. Now, 90% of all task management systems, if not all of them, have their own internal automation workflows. Now, obviously, these are very, very different to what we're doing on Zapier and Make. They're already active in the actual app, but we can actually leverage them to send information to Make so we can actually process the request and update it or whatnot. Obviously, when I'm building this out, I'm going to be showing this specifically for NodeLoco, which is just the tool I'm using to build this task management system. About 90% of all task management tools have this sort of functionality, and you'll see what I mean in a second when I'm actually building out. There's nothing complicated. So for the trigger, I'm just going to put when task record is updated, and for the field we want to watch is the status. So every time we move it to a certain status, we want this automation to trigger. For the action, we're going to set up a filter so that it only works for completed tasks. So for that, I'm going to go only continue if, and then I'm going to search for the status field, contains or is equal to, I guess, and I'm going to enter that so we can put completed, and just like that. So now this is going to trigger every single time a task is moved to completed, and it's only going to work if that task has actually been moved to completed stage. Once again, guys, this is nothing complicated. I know ClickUp does this. I know Asana does this. There's a bunch of different softwares out there that actually allow you to do these kind of things. And if they don't, I'm sure they have some sort of Make integration. If you have any specific questions of different platforms, like I said, I'm very well versed in most agency task management platforms. So if you want to find out how to do this with any specific platform that I haven't mentioned in this video, you can leave a comment below and I'll write you a detailed response so you can actually do this for whatever platform you're using. Now, the next step we want to do to actually tie this back to Make, we want to add an action to send a webhook. This is just a way that we can trigger an API request within Make. So for this, I'm going to go over here to trigger a webhook, and here we're going to enter a webhook URL. So let's go ahead and actually create that. If you go back to Make, we can see that automation we just previously created. We're going to save that. I'm going to go leave this, and now we're going to create another automation. So for this, I'm going to call this the customer support automation 2. Once you've gone ahead and do that, we want to set up the trigger. Now for this, I'm going to press this big plus button, and then I'm going to find webhooks right here. I'm going to leave it as a custom webhook, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new hook, just like that. Now here, we can simply just copy this by pressing this button. And if you go back to our task management system, and we're going to just simply just paste that in right here, just like that. So now every single time a task is moved to complete, it's going to go ahead and trigger this. And we can actually test this. Let's launch this firstly, just like that. And if everything's saved, so if we go back over to our app and we just move this to completed, we should see this come in on Make. Let's see. Things come in. Nothing yet. If we go back over here, just to double check everything's working properly. Workflow here. When we go to run history, we can see that just got sent in 5 seconds ago. So now if we go back to Make, we see that task has come in with the task notes, the task name, and all of the different information, which is perfect. This is exactly what we need. So now we know that task completed from the trigger. We want to send a Slack message to the team to let them know that the task has been completed and congratulate them, I guess. And we want to send an email to the actual client. This is fairly similar to what we did before, but I'm still going to run you through it. So for this, I'm going to go over to Slack. I'm going to scroll down to actually create a message. Once again, I will be using my testing channel. If you're using a specific team channel, then this is where you add it just by selecting it from a list, just like that. So once I've gone ahead and actually connected my test channel, once again, we're going to be presented by the option of using text or blocks. Usually I'd use blocks similar to what we did last time, but just to make this as quick as possible, I'm just going to write a random text, just congratulate them for actually finishing the task. You have to alter this depending on what you're specifically doing, but I'm happy with this. Let's see if there's any information we want to add from here. No, honestly, I'm cool with this. I don't mind this at all. I'm going to go ahead and press OK. And we won't even test that, we'll leave it as that. And the last thing we want to do is send an email to the client. Now for this, we want to search for Gmail. We're going to go down to send an email. And this way we can add all the information. Now, if we add the to recipient, we can see at the moment we don't have any fields that directly have that email as an individual kind of text. So in order to actually do this, we're going to go ahead and have another step right here, which is called a text parser right there. Now, for this, I'm going to scroll down to actually match the pattern. I'm going to connect this to our module. Now, for this, we need to identify a specific pattern, and I think it's called regex. If I go right here, it's very complicated. Honestly, guys, the best thing I could recommend is just ask whatever you want to ask within ChatGPT. So if I show you an example, here I went ahead and actually asked it to scroll up. So here I just asked it to basically give me the specific format on how to extract that email. And if I scroll all the way down, you can see it generates this regex code for me, which will be very, very specific depending on how actually formatting this email. So the best thing I can say is go with ChatGPT and actually just ask it. But once we've got the specific regex code, we can just copy the code, close this, and for the pattern, enter that right there for the pattern, just like that. Perfect. And now, the only thing we need to add here is the actual text. So if you scroll down to text, and we're going to add the task notes, which is where the email actually exists. So just to show you an example of how this actually works, if we go ahead and test this module, just like that, and we go, I'm going to add a random text or blah, 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 blah. I'm going to add our email, boom, fluxomate@gmail.com as an example. And then once again, we're just going to add some more random text, more random text, more random text, even some numbers, why not? And we press OK, we should see it should only output that specific email, which it does perfectly. So now we can actually send it to someone. So for two, we're going to go all back to our add a recipient. And we can select that answer from our text parser, which is just the email, guys. For the subject, we can put consider it done. I don't know. Once again, don't take the copy from this, just an example. We can say your task has been completed. Thank you for your patience, whatever. Cool. So that's pretty much it, guys. So now that's actually built out. Obviously, we actually need to test it to make sure it's working properly. So if I go back to my task management system, and all we have to do is update this to completed, and this automation should run automatically. So let's go back to make.com now. Now it could take a minute to actually run. So here I'm just going to run it once, which should automatically trigger that webhook to collect any information. I'll give it a second to actually think about it. And hopefully this automation now should run, send a Slack message to the team, and send an email to the client, which it just has. Perfect. So you can see it sent a Slack message, it's passed that text, and it sent an email. Let's go ahead and double check that for ourselves. If we go to our testing channel, we can see we have that message here. Obviously, guys, you have to change this. At the moment, this doesn't provide any real information to your team, but it's not a horrible starting point. And now we can go to Gmail to actually check this gone through properly. You can see we have that email once again from Leo Fluxomate, telling us that our task is completed and to thank us for our patience. As you can see, the text parsers are actually gone automatically extracted that email from this string of text. So I'm happy with this, guys. Obviously, both the Slack message copy and the email copy do need some work. So in terms of Slack, I recommend using a block builders that I showed you in the previous step. And in terms of the email, I'd recommend just adding a bit more information about the actual task, maybe the team members that actually did it, and you can extract all of that from your task management system. All right, guys, so we've gone ahead and completed the first automations. Now I'm going to show you a quick bonus automation. Honestly, guys, the main thing I want to show you here is the trigger, because I'm going to show you how the task management system we built in the previous step, you can actually integrate seamlessly with an automation. Now, I know a lot of task management systems, ClickUp, I believe, and Notion have buttons as well. But from my understanding and everything I've worked with, they don't have buttons similar to this. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Now, an example of the automation could be actually requesting a message. Now, an example of that automation in action could be sending a message to the team and then sending an email to the client, letting them know that we're actually working on it and just give us a bit more time or something like that. But all I want to show you is the actual trigger for it. I think that's the main thing I want to focus on, just to give you an example of how seamlessly automation ties into that project management system we actually built out in the previous step. So for that, we want to go back to our task management system. And the first thing we want to do is actually create a button. So if you go over here to general and scroll all the way down to, well, actually, if we go over here to options and we go to record buttons, we can see we can add a new one. We're going to call this update, or actually request update. Perfect. For the icon, I'm going to put yellow, and I'm going to leave it as a one-click button, just like that. And then for the actions, which was basically what's going to happen when the update, when that button is pressed, I'm going to scroll down to run an on-demand workflow. just like that. Now, obviously, we don't have any workflows right now. So if I go back to the workflow section side of things and I create a new workflow for the tasks, just like that, we can see we have this option to select the trigger when a action button is pressed. And for this, we're going to just trigger a webhook similar to what I did in the previous step without all that information. So if you go quickly back to app, and now if you go back to that button we just created, we can choose what workflow to actually run. And for this, it's going to be task workflow 2. Now, once that's done, we also need to set up that webhook similar to what we did in the second automation. So for this, I'm going to go back to make. I'm going to go ahead and actually save this. And I want to create a new scenario so we can actually collect that information. So I want to go create a new scenario. I'm going to name this customer support automation 3, just like that. And for this, I'm going to scroll down and exactly the same thing I did in the previous step. I'm going to go to webhook, custom webhook, and I'm just going to add a new one, save that. And now if you copy this to the clipboard, go back to our task management platform and just copy and paste that URL, just like that. This automation is ready to go. Now you could add more things such as updating a task or anything like that, but I'm just going to leave this as now. And if you go back over here, make sure everything's saved, perfect, like that, press done. Now, if you go back to our app, and you can see, we see that button in any one of these. So if I go ahead and press this and actually request the update and we go back to make and actually just run this to see if any data actually comes in, just like that, we'll just see that webhook that we just filled in come in. Once again, can take a couple seconds to actually load, but usually it's always within a minute. And you can see that data just now automatically come in just like that with all that information similar to the previous step. And you just do the exact same thing we did in the previous automation, by sending a message to the team and sending a message to the client. The only thing you change is the copy. Obviously, I'm not going to show you that because it's literally just a copy and paste of what we did previously. In fact, I would even recommend just duplicating an automation rather than creating the whole thing again to make your life a bit easier. And that's pretty much it, guys. So if you've not had to actually create free automations that you can use to actually automate your customer support, once again, I wouldn't use this as your main customer support element, but I think it's a great addition to have in emergency situations where your client needs something, where your client needs some sort of feedback as soon as possible, and you can actually use this to calm them down and let them know that we have someone working on it. For us, we have a whole separate team. Well, it's a team, I say one person, that just focuses on the urgent automation requests. Back when we were doing automation subscriptions, it was a bit more useful. Nowadays, not as much because we moved on to the program side of things. But honestly, guys, it's a great addition to actually have. And like I said, it just calms your client down a lot more and just allows them to have a place where they can go to if there's any emergencies with your service or anything related to what you guys are doing. Now, this is a great automation, but in order to take to the next level, there's four main things you can do. The first thing, which is something I mentioned earlier, but it's actually linking that task to a specific project or client. That will make your life a lot easier. You can do things such as sending specific messages to clients on Slack, I don't know, getting a client's information such as their name. It's just a way to actually boost this to the next level. The only reason I didn't do it for this example is because I wanted to make this applicable with any task management system. If you have a task management system and you're not linking your tasks to a specific client or project, then I really recommend you do it because they can now help you take this and just your project management in general to a whole nother level. The second thing I also do is find a way to link this to a client portal. Now this is just somewhere where your client can actually log in and see all the progress they're actually doing on a task. This is another great way to just keep your client in a loop and make sure they can see all the updates on the different things you're doing. Once again, just to calm them down as much as possible. What I think is sending regular updates. So obviously I showed you that automation where you can actually request the update. However, if this is the task that will require more time, you can create more automations like the one I showed you to let them know we're working on it, we need a bit more time because of XYZ, anything like that. Obviously, depending on how many clients you have, you may choose to just do this manually, but it's important to actually let them know what's going on and keep them in a loop as much as you possibly can. Once again, just keep them as calm as possible and reassure that you're actually doing the things you're saying you're doing. And lastly is chatbot versus form. Now, what I mean by this is obviously at the start, I'll show you a form that your clients can fill in whenever they're having an issue. However, you can also do this with a chatbot. This is a bit easier for your client, I guess, a bit more conversational, like a support assistant. But let's say you can host it on a specific Slack channel rather than a website. And whenever they have a problem, they can just add that specific assistant, add some information about the task, and that system will automatically, firstly, give them some advice. And if they can't help them based on their specific SOPs or practices, then it can go ahead and create a task for one of your team members to actually complete. That is a bit more complicated, but if you want a video going over any one of these things, I'm more than happy to actually record it for you guys, specifically the chatbot, because I haven't really done many videos on chatbots just because when I first started, there was a lot of hype around them, and I don't think they're as useful as everyone says they are. But I do definitely see there are some use cases for it. So if you do want to see some applications of chatbots, I can make a video completely on chatbots, how to set them up, and the best use cases you can actually use within your agency. But that's it, pretty much it for this video, guys. It's been a pleasure actually recording this. If you want access to this mind map that I showed here, the specific automation blueprints, and all of the different resources that I actually used in this video, you can check out the first link in the description to actually access the blueprint. It's 100% free, as with everything else we do, and it's just a great way to provide you guys even more value, so you can just copy the things I'm doing directly into your Make accounts. Apart from that, guys, make sure to like and subscribe to see more videos like this. We actually just hit 800 subscribers, so thank you so much for everyone's support. In all honesty, guys, I really don't care about subscribers. I'm not doing this for subscribers. Obviously, I'm being selfish here. My main goal is that hopefully you learn some automations, get started in your automation journey, and then when the time is right and you actually want to build up a skill-proof agency on the operation side of things, you come to us and actually work with my company. So subscribers, views, all of that stuff, I don't really mind. As long as I'm putting out valuable content and you guys are actually enjoying, I'm happy. But regardless, thank you very much for 800 subscribers. It is good seeing all that hard work I put on the channel actually pay off. But if you're not subscribed yet, make sure to like and subscribe to see more videos like this on your feed. I guarantee there's no one else in the space giving out this much value on a consistent basis. I also have some other links in the description to have a look at what we offer, or even get access to our 20 plus breakdown documents with 5 custom automations and a bunch of different things. So if you're interested in any of that, make sure to check the link in the description. But apart from that, guys, it's been a pleasure actually recording this video. If you have any questions about anything I talked about in this video or any video suggestions, please leave a comment. We're a very, very small channel. So if you leave a comment, we're 100% going to see it and give you an in-depth response. So if you have any questions about anything I talked about today, you want to see more specific things, just leave a comment below and I'll be there to actually respond to you and provide any sort of support that I actually can. Thank you guys so much for watching. We've got new videos coming out within the next couple of days. So make sure to keep an eye out for that. And that's it from me, guys. I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye.